Cheers, allies. It's Monday, April 27th. Here's your cup of Jones. Can't do my desk faced this way. I could hold it with the right. You just do a legitimate left-handed sip with the handle. That's not so bad. You can just do that. Hi, everybody. Everyone in our YouTube chat is talking about it. I might as well kick it off. Fantabulous Don't Skip went up this morning from Mr. Daniel Bloodworth. Shout out to Blood for finishing that. VO'd it as well. And he is indeed in a large room, or it sounds like it when he did the VO. But it's really nice to have. I very, very much enjoyed watching it because it is a 15-minute look at the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. Lots and lots of games. Shout out to Don Casanova who cut it. And it was very much enjoyable to watch a video that is narrated, that has a script, and then I have not read the script. I have not seen this video. That does not happen often because I'm voicing a lot of stuff, and so that video came together very, very well, I thought. Hi, everyone. So this is an interesting week. Kyle Bossman left Easy Allies last Friday. I try to figure out the least damaging way to describe it. Kyle Bossman decided to do things other than working on Easy Allies every day. Friday officially was Kyle's last day. I want to emphasize something. I actually didn't even put this in my notes, but I think it's worth saying. I know potentially a lot of you were looking forward to more things with Kyle. We're looking forward to kind of a more of a big hurrah. Obviously, we couldn't celebrate Kyle's legacy at Easy Allies the way that we would have, preferred because we are at home and not in the studio. But any of the vibes that you felt in the podcast last week and our group stream that we did last Tuesday night, which I encourage you to check out, that's on the main channel, is the same vibes that he delivered to us in his goodbye on Slack. Very much like, okay, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but I am officially signing off. And so, and I felt bad, we messaged him after that, but he's, Kyle's not on Slack anymore. I don't know if you saw that stuff. So we had a big fun week with Kyle last week, and we have some fun stuff for you. Kyle left us 3 wonderful presents before he left. One was a bet that I won that I was very much looking forward to him doing that. It was Kingdom Hearts 3 with toys in the vein of, it's a cutscene from Kingdom Hearts 3 in the vein of the developer, work in progress cutscenes that you can unlock in Devil May Cry 5. And I felt bad because I sent him a cutscene that was Hercules fighting these 3, I don't know what they were, the 3 titans, the 3 giants or whatever, at the end, one of the first battles in Kingdom Hearts 3. I was like, oh, this is great. He's got to figure out how to do all these special effects and stuff. And then he got back to me and said, yeah, I'm just going to do the conversation, between Hercules and the group and Hades and stuff. And I'm like, no, you got to do the fight. And he was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm like, all right. He's like, it's too tough. I'm like, that's the whole point. That was why the Devil May Cry 5 videos were funny, is you got to see how they tried to be all these big crazy monsters. And I was hoping Kyle would do everything all by himself. Kyle would play all the characters, but he did a very good job with that. He had a fantastic duet with Mr. Ben Moore, who did a fair amount of singing and lyric writing on that track as well. That was very much enjoyable. All 3 of these things you can check out on our main channel separately. And Hunting Huber, which we got to get back to at some point. That we just had a meeting on Friday, actually, on his last day, had a meeting, one of our first meetings without Kyle, to discuss not only stuff moving forward without Kyle, but the month of May. And we definitely talked about Hunting Huber. How can we make Hunting Huber a fun thing that we can return to? But yes, we had this first meeting without him, and there were a couple fun things that are coming from that meeting, a couple fun things, scheduling things to look forward to. One of the things that influenced what I was doing last night, because I stayed up a little bit, I'm a little tired this morning, because I stayed up a little bit last night playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, because we put up our spoiler mode of Final Fantasy VII Remake starring Mr. Maximilian Dude, who joined us online for that chat. Thank you very much, Max. And that is performing very, very well. We usually, 9 times out of 10, we will put up our spoiler modes for our patrons only, for $1 patrons, as an exclusive show on patreon.com. And every single time we do that, we see a surge in people going to our Patreon. And whether those people are lifelong patrons, whether those people are tuning in just to watch that one show, it still creates awareness. It still is a nice bump in our numbers. But speaking of nice bumps in numbers, that Spoiler Mode has done really, really well on YouTube. And we are going to do 2 more spoiler-filled discussions on Final Fantasy VII. One of them is going to feature everybody that was not in, because we had to give up a seat for Max to come into the conversation. And so anyone else that has finished Final Fantasy VII that was not in that original video is going to do a separate conversation. And I am going to, Brad Ellis will not be a part of that video because I am going to sit down with Mr. Brad Ellis upon completion of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And Brad and I will hash it out and we'll talk about it. I'm very much looking forward to that. And that is definitely lighting a fire under me to finish Final Fantasy VII Remake, although I'm very much enjoying it. Trying to think. Chapter 12? Chapter 11 or Chapter 12? Favorite chapter so far. Really, really good chapter. The Don't Skip on TurboGrafx-16 from Bloodworth. Thank you, Bloodworth, for that. Community Showcase next Monday with Michael Huber. Some people were asking me for a very long time when Michael Huber would return to the podcast or return to the showcase. And I will be sitting down in this chair. We'll be doing it online and we'll be going through everything with Michael Huber. So 180K on Spoiler Mode so far. So yes. That's doing well. It's a very unusual thing for us to put out a spoiler mode like that. It just seemed there was just a lot of circumstances that, again, the working with Max and having that obviously be something that other people could see, so that Max isn't taking time out of his busy day to show up for something that none of his audience can watch, except with the exception of it being behind a paywall. But it being such a huge game, such an anticipated conversation, I think every now and then it's nice for people to see. 180,000 people watch that. 180,000 people that will potentially see the promo for the next spoiler mode and be like, but wait, the last one was, I got to pay. Well, all right. Then maybe they'll go over to Patreon and check us out. It's always an interesting give and take, the stuff that we have behind a paywall. We've been experimenting a lot in 4 years. We talked stuff coming up, actually, that some unannounced stuff that we talked about at the meeting that we're going to be working on that we're trying to figure out, do we want this to be Patreon exclusive? Do we want this to be early access for people on Patreon? What tier do we want to have that on? And so experimenting with not only spoiler modes, but other things every single time we plan a series. And so we don't know how that stuff is going to work out until after the fact. And so obviously every time we do stuff like that, after that goes up, then we take all of that information and apply that whenever it's time to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. Today's editorial is about the Easy Allies podcast, which we just did a podcast all about the Easy Allies podcast last Friday. If you watch it, it is just Kyle and myself talking about hashing it out. And of course, just talking about the podcast, what it's like for him to host, what it may be like for me to host. This Thursday will be my first time hosting the Easy Allies podcast. We'll get into the schedule, some schedule shifts to make room for me and the other allies that will be involved in that. But on this past weekend when we did the podcast, it was really about Kyle and myself, the differences between Kyle's podcast and my podcast. Today, I want to talk about just in general the importance of the Easy Allies podcast, kind of what it means, which I did touch on again last week. And it's not going to be a super long editorial, but I just want to talk to you, the Cup of Jones audience, to our patrons, kind of the value of the Easy Allies podcast moving forward. Let's look at the schedule. Here we go. There it is. Yay! Cup of Jones! It's happening! Did I get an updated schedule? Because you bumped up the Don't Skip. It's already up. 9 a.m. Yes, that went up. So apologies if there was an updated. You messaged me that one directly, the schedule, so that's why I grabbed it. Frame Trap also today. Ben Moore is going nuts on Twitch this week. Ben Moore has so many streams, so many things that he is going to be involved in. Shout out to Ben Moore. Tuesday at 11 a.m., Soccer Wars with Ben Moore. Tuesday at 12 p.m., Gears Tactics with Ben Moore. Tuesday at 2 p.m., Patron Q&A, our regular Q&A, which Ben Moore will be a part of. And then at 6 p.m., Predator Hunting Grounds, which I believe Ben will be a part of. I'm not sure. I think I am going to be your host for that. I think you're going to be watching me playing Predator Hunting Grounds, but obviously I will be playing with and against all of the other allies, and of course Huber will be there hunting all of us. Website says showcases with Kyle. Good to know. Wednesday at 11 a.m. XCOM Chimera Squad, again with Ben Moore. So Soccer Wars, Gears Tactics, Patron Q&A, Predator Hunting Grounds, XCOM Chimera Squad, all with Ben. You're getting back-to-back streams with Ben, not to mention 4 streams on Tuesday. Dead Rising 2 is Mike and Mike. That will be Damiani and Huber returning to that game. Wednesday at 6. I lied to all of you wonderful Animal Crossing fans and Easy Allies fans last week. I apologize. I said that I wanted to commit to a regular time. I'm committing to a regular time of day. It is still going to be around 5 or 6 p.m., but we are going to be doing the podcast a little bit early on Thursday. We're going to be experimenting. Showcase fixed. Nice. Bloodworth on the case. We're going to be experimenting now that I'm in charge with when we shoot the podcast, because I for a very long time, I had Silver Squad with Kyle, and then we had Dreams Lovers, and that was the thing that we gathered together to do on Thursdays, and then we would shoot the podcast after that. Well, we're virtual now, so that opens up our schedule for when we can do things, and also we can potentially do that earlier, so I can get an earlier start on the podcast on Thursday, so I don't have to stay up so late cutting the podcast on Thursday, and so potentially early access people can get the podcast very, very, very early on Friday morning when all of that goes up. So we're going to be experimenting with that time, and the Animal Hop is shifting. And obviously, we need to find a time that is comfortable with everybody, and not everybody is on the Easy Allies podcast every week, and so that schedule is going to be evolving. Just our shoot schedules can be evolving a little bit each week before we figure that out. But we'll talk about that again in the editorial, because all sorts of stuff is going to be evolving week to week as I assume hosting responsibilities of the Easy Allies podcast, which might not seem like a big deal. Yeah, you got one person leaving, another person coming in. It's a big deal to me. Wednesday at 9 p.m., Super Mario Maker 2 with Ian and Don. Thursday at 10, Huber Syndrome. Thursday at 10 a.m., Ben's back, baby. Persona 5 Royal and Weekly Hunts. Tuesday and Thursdays are Ben's days. It's Ben's days. You have Wednesdays right in the middle of the week, but Tuesday and Thursday this week are Ben's days. Friday, Friend Code. Friday, podcast. Easy update, and then the podcast this weekend. Thank you to everybody that joined me for I still have not gone back to Boot Hill Bounties to see if I can make that dinner, collect all the ingredients. That was crazy. I'm so glad that happened right at the end of the stream. But I streamed a little bit more than I usually do. I streamed a game that I have for Switch, a Western turn-based role-playing game called Boot Hill Bounties that I'm playing on the Switch that I played a couple hours of, which was fun. And maybe a couple more games that I would like to stream in the near future. There's one game that I've been holding off streaming for a very long time that I was thinking of streaming this weekend, but I was just like, it's going to take away from my precious Final Fantasy VII time. And I'm not even at 30 hours in that game, man. That's I haven't played an RPG that long in a while. And I know obviously it's just like one part of all of Final Fantasy VII, and many RPGs are much, much longer than that. But it's a longer game than I haven't played in a while. But there's your schedule. Business questions. Here they come. How are you? Cheers. Just water in the cup, but got my coffee cup over there. Took a gigantic swig. Just when you listen to the jazz in the beginning, the countdown jazz, just imagine me fixing my hair and swigging coffee. Rob Slope. I think you may need to talk to one of the mods in chat. They've been extremely strict and banning people for jokes that chat has made for years. I even got timed out for 10 minutes for telling someone I agree with their comment in chat, saying the mod is out of control. It feels like this mod has let the power get to their head, and during the Bossman Damiani Mega Man stream, that was just a casual chat talking to the streamers. It turned into everyone questioning a bad mod for a long time. I've been here since the beginning, and I don't even know who that person is, but they're ruining the fun we have in chat by making it more PC than a Kotaku article. Personally, I'm not even going to participate in chat while this person remains as a moderator. It's just not the same recently. It's like you have to walk on eggshells, and we can't even joke around with the person streaming anymore, and they take it upon themselves to ban even words being said when Twitch has built-in ways to censor words you don't like. Okay. I was almost going to do an editorial on mods today, because this is attempting to address something that is always an evolving situation, which is how do we deal with the community? How do we deal with people in live chat talking all the time? Chat's blowing up right now. Talking all the time, having conversations all the time, joking all the time, people in different countries who have different languages, who have different, one word might mean one thing to one person, might mean one thing to another person. Explaining things in Twitch chat is a very complicated process, actually getting a point across. And so this is a constantly an evolving situation. So Rob, what you're explaining is something that internally happens. The process that happens all the time is this happened in chat. What do we think about it? Other mods weigh in, and then we move forward. And so I have many, many points to bring up on this. Point number one is I wouldn't say this is necessarily a Cup of Jones issue. This isn't something necessarily that I need to step in and fix. This is not something that, needs the Jones touch, and then all of a sudden the situation is going to go away. This is not a time to have like a mass exodus. I saw, there were some other people. Rob also directed me to the audio post, which again, there's just a lot of talk on the audio post this week. I put the audio post up as a functional thing to exist for, people to hear Cup of Jones. That's it. I don't take questions from the audio post. As a rule, not going to do it. But so yeah, you posting twice or posting in different places or something is not going to increase the likelihood of me potentially understanding, the comment that you're trying to make. But I certainly sympathize with people, and there are definitely instances where our mods make a decision that they regret or approach a situation with a bit of uncertainty because something new has come up that they have not handled before, and it is a constantly educational process. Our mods are constantly learning about our community. They're learning about new games that are coming out, new conversations that are happening online, and trying their best to understand the attitudes, where all of our community at large is coming from. But I'm not going to bump a person because of one particular incident. I'm not going to bump a person from our mod list because of a question that's brought up on Cup of Jones. I don't mean to be insensitive to your comment and to the slight that you feel that has been brought down upon you. But I do want to take this opportunity, which is why I was tempted to make an editorial to shout out to our mods. Our mods are not paid. Our mods are complete volunteers. Our mods work very, very hard. Our mods certainly are involved in our Twitch channel much more than I am. They watch much more of our live content than I do. They are involved, in the case of the example that you brought up for that stream, had to go back and watch the stream, watch the stream log, go back and follow the conversation that happened behind the scenes with our mods. And for anyone that's been frustrated by situations like this, that's been frustrated that they feel that they were that their opinions were silenced on Twitch, that somebody might have gone a little overboard with muting or banning, or we've had instances like that. We definitely have complaints. It's not a new thing. That's been going on since the 4 years of Easy Allies and even before that. So I just wish that obviously this is a process that should remain private, because this is something that just like when we have meetings, just like when we have, behind the scenes things at Easy Allies, decisions like this are not done lightly. Decisions like this, streams like this are like I said, are a learning process. And so I wish you could see behind the scenes conversations that happen from all angles, trying to assess a given situation and understand what the best course of action is moving forward. I do not expect whatsoever our mods to be perfect by any means. I definitely want them to. I like our mods. When I was going through the list and seeing the way they talked about this issue and see the way they problem solved and tried to move forward and learn from all of these different situations, I feel confident that we have the right people that are moderating our community, because it is a tricky job. Moderating is something that I've never done. That's something that I certainly don't know. Really, truthfully, it's just kind of like hosting the Easy Allies podcast. I can imagine what it's like, but I won't know exactly what it's like until I do it. And so I have a tremendous amount of respect, like I said, not only for people that have the job that they do, but that is not a paying job. That is just something that they do because they are passionate about Easy Allies, because they want to help out with our community. And they learn more and more every day. And so Also, I took the name out of the comments, and again, that I don't think that's very constructive to do here on Cup of Jones. Just to be like, I don't like that mod. It's like, okay, there are ways. We didn't miss any part of this stream or these issues. We see these conversations happen in their various spots. We have exit surveys, we have comments sent to us on Patreon, we have direct messages, we have comments on YouTube videos, we have Cup of Jones, we have lots of different opportunities for you to give feedback here at Easy Allies. We don't miss those things. There aren't big massive conversations that completely we turn a blind eye to. We are aware of all of these things. We do read all of these conversations, and so there's no need to point fingers to call people out specifically. And again, when it comes, it's one of the other issues. Kicking this episode of Cup of Jones off with a spicy comment and a spicy reply. There are also issues in regards to kind of like a he said she said, or they said situation where, again, you kind of have to parse through like, okay, what was meant and who said it and in what instance, and then who replied and what did they say, and and so the way you ask the question, Rob, it sounds like there's a very simple answer to it, and there's not, because there's just a lot of research that has to happen. There's a lot of homework that needs to be done in order to understand what happened, or to understand why it happened, what's the best thing that should happen, and what we should do moving forward. And so in instances like that, where maybe that there is a lesson learned, I don't think the right thing to do on our end is then to boot that person out and then bring in another person and have to completely educate that person on how to handle these situations and what our community is like, and have them get to know the other mods and so on and so forth. So it would take I'm not sure actually what we have said goodbye to mods before. We have, we are in a constant flux of assigning new mods and taking, moderating abilities away from other people if need be. And so that is a constantly evolving situation, but it's just not something where, if someone feels slighted or was frustrated by, something that happened in Twitch chat, then that's going to result in a Cup of Jones comment, which is then going to result automatically in me, reaching out. But you may need to talk to one of the mods in chat, starting on your comment. We talk to the mods in chat all the time. That conversation is constantly happening. And I know it might feel like it does not, but it doesn't take just instances like this for those conversations to happen. That is our mods are busy. Being a mod is a busy, oftentimes a very thankless job. So shout out to the mods. Space Dom, if you and another ally wanted and watch and commentate some pre-recorded game footage remotely, what programs would you use for that? Sorry. If you and another ally wanted to watch and commentate some pre-recorded game footage remotely, right, what programs would you use for that? So we're going to watch that at the same time. It's interesting, Space Dom, we actually at the meeting talked about E3, because E3 is not happening, but stuff is happening that week. Kind of Funny is probably, and just to add, sorry, Blood is, I don't know if Blood, you're replying to people in chat if you want me to add this. I don't think specifying a problem with the mod's action is a problem, but asking for people to be removed rather than letting us decide how to address the situation is an overreach. I agree. But we talked about, okay, how are we going to, because I don't think we've done reactions yet since we've been at home. I don't think there's been a direct. If there was a direct, maybe one person reacted to it. But it's like, if Sony has a big thing, the next time they got a big state of play, how do we do that? Because are we all going to watch different feeds and then react at different times? And so we decided, what might be the best course of action is to have a Zoom call. So basically, you're just watching us on Zoom. You're watching a conference call, and the person that is hosting the conference call is actually not hosting the stream. Depends on quality. It will obviously run tests before June game party, whatever we want to call it. It's like, that's the frustrating thing about the ESA with E3. It's like, just let us call it E3. Just say that E3 is going to be 2 weeks of people doing stuff. But it's just everyone's going to try to do something to replace E3, and none of it's going to be called E3. And so like we're like, hey, welcome to the time we kick off announcements for games and kick off the summer and stuff. And so one of the things that we debated is you have one person that is playing the stream and that is posting that to screen sharing basically to Zoom, and then another person, so their internet isn't buckling with streaming the video and streaming the feed out to Twitch. But you have one person sending that video signal to the rest of the crew that is watching it, and then that full screen video with all of the people up top or on the side that everybody is watching, another ally is streaming that to Twitch. So is the quality going to be fantastic? No. Has the quality been fantastic ever since we started our lockdown or quarantine? No. But we that is potentially one way we could do that. So, and apologies if that doesn't answer your question, but we could also just grab an MP4 from our Google Drive and watch it together. And Space Dom with question number 2, sneaking another one in. When you have guests like Maximilian Dude on the Final Fantasy VII spoiler mode, is there any financial compensation involved for the guest, or is it cross promotion of their brand enough? It's just cross promotion. Yeah. There's no money that changes hands, which is why we thank Max so much. Thank you, Max. Faraz Rizvi, I just wanted to plead for you guys to be better with your YouTube branding and thumbnails. This is mainly triggered by the Final Fantasy VII spoiler mode that just went up. You have a special guest, Max, and it's public, but there's no mention of him in the title of the video or the thumbnail. I'm sure the views on the spoiler mode will be good, but they probably could have been a lot better. It's as simple as Final Fantasy VII spoiler mode with Maximilian Dude. This takes no extra effort. A little bit. It doesn't just automatically happen. Minimal extra effort. A few seconds. Even better would be to put his face in the thumbnail so people browsing actually see that. If these changes, small changes, which can really help videos and the channel grow after so many years, these things shouldn't be missed. It has been updated, and Faraz recognized that, but I just wanted Faraz to get credit for bringing that up on Cup of Jones. But the thumbnail and the title says as much now. And thank you for that suggestion. James Vest, got to ask the hard question, what are the odds of us ever getting a Tootsie emote for Twitch? We have a new emote for Twitch. We got the blood sniff emote. Blood has previously sniffed, and Blood has sniffed many times since his first initial. I mean, Blood has sniffed before. He just specifically labeled the act as a sniff, so we have to listen now for the. Is Blood sniffing? Is Blood sniffing me? I mean, it's not strange when Blood sniffs stuff. Now it's strange when Blood doesn't sniff. When Blood misses something, it's like. You didn't sniff that? But we did talk about other emotes. Emotes are, it's tricky. Emotes are something that has always gone back and forth because it is a process. There are 9 of us, there are 8 of us. And obviously it's got to be something that is relevant to all of us. It's got to be something that all of us agree on. And we meet once a month to talk about these things. And sometimes if something that would be a good idea for a emote is not a great idea for a emote a month later. I will say, I will not make promises on when new emotes will pop up, but we are in the process of making new emotes, and a Tootsie emote did come up in the conversation. Josh Reed, no offense to the other allies, but I feel like you are lifting too much of the burden, for lack of a better term, of community interaction shows. With a weekly Cup of Jones, the monthly community showcase, and now the Easy A podcast, which has a sizable community portion. It just feels like maybe another ally should be doing one of these things. Selfishly, I love Cup of Jones, and I don't want anything to change, but I think Community Showcase could do okay with another host. What? I don't. No. I wouldn't mind. Damiani took it over for 1 or 2 episodes. That was fun. Brad, maybe, since he doesn't have a hosting gig right now. Brad doesn't have a hosting gig, but give me a month or so with the Easy Allies podcast, and then I'll figure out if that's too much work, and I will gleefully assign the community showcase to be handled by another ally. Brad doesn't need a hosting gig. Brad isn't chomping at the bit to have a hosting gig. We just had a meeting on Friday, and Brad didn't scream at the top of his lungs, I want to host something. All of us don't have to be hosts. We all don't have to fill in a specific role. It's totally fine if some of the allies are focused on very specific things. The other thing that there are lots of other community-focused community interaction shows. Shout out to Ben Moore, who handles a lot of that stuff. Ben Moore does a special D&D campaign just with our patrons. Ben Moore hosts the patron Q&A, which is coming up this week and is a very big, has a very sizable community portion, I would say. And obviously there is a Q&A portion to Frame Trap, ask easyallies@gmail.com. And so Ben is very involved in that as well. And I would say, with our streams, and there's just a lot of community interaction stuff. I know if you add up the hours that I spend doing Cup of Jones and then now the podcast and community showcase, maybe my hour length is longer than any of the other allies. But that's because I like to talk a lot. And so I fit very comfortably into those roles. And maybe this is a good time to just throw out like a tiny little warning. Massive comment from Logan Young coming up. Get prepared. That's not the warning. Things might change just in my role at Easy Allies now that I'm working on the podcast. I'm working on it this week. We just had a couple of fun news items that popped up this morning, actually. Then it's just like, oh, make a note. I'm going to mention that on the Easy Allies podcast, which I host now. I have an idea of how much work it'll take to work on the podcast every week, but I don't really know for sure how hard that will be. And I'm not going to know until I do it this week and go, okay, well, that was interesting. I'll take those lessons. And I didn't write down any takeaways this week. I don't think I've had any takeaways so far. And no takeaways that we haven't already implemented, at least. So a little bit of patience, I would ask, please, just with the Easy Allies podcast and my role in general. I'm still looking forward to hosting the community showcase this week. I enjoy doing the showcase from my desk. The showcase is kind of fun, doing just a two-camera setup, two webcam setup, doing the showcase. But we'll see moving forward. Joseph LaRusso, one critique of your suggested opening line for your opening statement on your first podcast. Did I suggest an opening line? I don't recall doing this. As official host, I don't think you should have impressions of games we're playing in there. Oh, yeah, because, well, you don't do that, LOL, at least not on the podcast. That's a Frame Trap thing. That's what I mentioned in the notes. Okay, so you're not referring to the last Cup of Jones. You're talking about the podcast, I think. I didn't realize this when I first read the question. That wasn't me kicking off the podcast. That was me. Yeah, I'm not going to. That was just Kyle talking about it on the first episode and then me on this last episode talking about what I feel, my mission statement for the Easy Allies podcast. And I said that's actually not what we do. Like, we don't do impressions of games we're playing. We talk about the news of games. I like the statement. Otherwise, do you intend to add impression segment to your version of the podcast? No. In my statement, I said we don't do impressions. So I'm confused if I wrote that incorrectly or if that was confusing for the listener. If not, I would remove that portion. I would remove it too. I don't know. We're not doing that. I mean, sometimes we'll talk about things that are a big deal. We talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake being a big deal previously on the podcast, being a big, release, and one of us could have played it at the time. And so, that kind of factors into impressions. But yeah, obviously that is like the core. That is the beating heart of Frame Trap. And so that will not be a part of the podcast as long as I'm in charge. I can't even fit this whole question on one page. Okay, so I'm gonna fly through this, although there's probably gonna be some takeaways from this. Logan Young, lots of suggestions for me, suggestions for the podcast. I think you did have a bit in there, yeah. I did? I thought I said that it wasn't that. I thought I said, like, we don't do impressions. I thought that's what that... I mean, I would bring it up. I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna bring up the mission statement right now. Where is it? Get over here. Get over here, mission statement. We react to the most affecting game news of the week. We predict and bet on what will happen in the week and discuss our understanding what would happen in the past week. We prioritize discovering decisions and announcements that affect the business of the industry ahead of discussing our impressions of games we're playing. So we do decisions and announcements that affect the business of the industry. We don't do impressions. That is what I said. We prioritize those things. Maybe you're saying don't just prioritize, kill it. Don't do it at all. And yeah, you don't have to worry about that. But there. That's what I said. Logan Young with many, many, many suggestions. 7 or 8 or so. First, desire index. Yes, anger everyone. Problem with desire index. It's hard for audiences to know where things are on the list without a visual. Well, good news. I edit the Easy Allies podcast as well, so maybe I will add all sorts of visual things. Solution. Use the overhead card game camera in the studio and have pins or laminated printed logos that represent the games? No, I'm not taking the time to make laminated logos for every game. No. When you start the ad read and the camera focuses on you, have the allies in the middle of the table set up the visual logos in order? Just a thought. Thank you, Logan, but no, or that no. Second, ad reads. Please keep the ads very well marked in the podcast timestamps. Yeah, we will continue to. Biggest complaint with Kinda Funny and Mega 64 is they interweave the ad read and don't clearly label it. Third, branding. Bloomberg has about 10 podcasts focused on financial markets. There's a podcast for each sector, overall markets, etc. But there's one podcast called Bloomberg Odd Lots, where they talk about something completely out of left field, like the intricate details of rare Korean volatility swaps. The hosts tie in the seemingly random topic into the broader financial landscape in interesting ways, and listeners have unique talking points that listeners won't get from other podcasts. Recommendation for a fast approaching issue: Bloomberg Odd Lots, Why the War on Physical Cash is a War on Freedom. Easy Allies is the Bloomberg Odd Lots of gaming podcasts. The unique perspectives you bring to the gaming landscape are what drives viewers to you. No other podcast goes in depth on NPDs. Really? No one talks about the game development process and management as intricately as Easy Allies. Good to know. I hope I can continue that. Keep the deep dive aspect of the podcast. I want Damiani to tell me what the 7 EPD groups at Nintendo are making. Stay weird. It's your brand. Okay. So basically just keep doing what we're doing. Fourth, don't go corporate. Never. Kinda Funny is corporate. Whoa, shots fired. Kinda Funny. Again, it's not me saying this Kinda Funny. It's our community. I like them, but I never know if I can trust their hosts to be as impartial as I believe someone covering the game industry should be. Interesting. Jones, if I didn't know you and had heard you praising GTA 6 marketing pre-release, I'd tune out thinking you're corporate. Not a critique, just something to keep in mind. The corporateness, my corporateness cannot be shaken. I've tried. I can't get it off me. It's in my DNA. It's built in. That's the brand manager. It just sometimes it just comes out. Gotta be honest. GTA 6 marketing. Has there been GTA 6 marketing? Did I miss anything? Fifth, Schreier. Get him on the podcast. Whatever it takes. Ask him the questions he doesn't get asked. Biggest screw-ups. Most proud work. What his process is. So there's our big takeaway so far. Just one word, Schreier. If we're learning from our Final Fantasy VII Remake, if I ever get Schreier on the podcast, it won't even be the normal podcast thumbnail. It'll just say Schreier in the title of it. Easy Allies podcast. Schreier. Kind of like The Life of Brian, the Monty Python, just like a big tablet, big stone, Schreier, like Star Wars, Schreier. I'm down. Side note, come up with a creative name for when Schreier drops a story. The Schreier Wire is the best I can think of. Sixth, physical fitness. Here we go. Something I haven't had in a long time. Your hidden competitive advantage is your knowledge of wellness, health, and physical fitness. Posture tips or gaming stretches with your trainer and Jones would be funny at the end of a podcast. Literally no one is doing that. There's a reason no one is doing that. No one wants to hear that. It's a problem with fitness. Fitness is like vegetables. Nobody wants them. Like nobody wants. Anytime I feel bad anytime I talk about meditation. It's like I bet there are people in our community that whenever I bring up meditating are like, right, yeah, meditating. Seems like it's got a lot of benefits. Yeah, Jones, you know what? I need to meditate. You're right. And then they won't do it. And there are times I'll go 2 weeks and I'll be like, whoa, I have not slowed down at all for 2 weeks. I've just been going and going and going. I have not taken the opportunity to just calm down, collect my breath, find the moment, get centered. But yeah, I mean, man, I've ever since Easy Allies has started, trust me, Sean Clinton and I have had, shout out to German Efficiency. We have had many, many conversations about wellness, about fitness. Maybe that's something that'll come up. I mean, anytime I've thought about, adding some sugar to help the medicine go down with fitness and wellness, integrating that somehow into the podcast. Maybe with Easy Allies, little less anime, little more fitness. It's like, do you see that going well? I don't, but we'll see. I appreciate you bringing it up. Teach me proper posture when you sit at the TV for 10 hours. Hell, make it its own series. No one would watch it. That series would do so poorly. It would do very bad. Because I think if you were going to do wellness and fitness, that would have to be your brand. I would have to tune in. Again, it's like vegetables, it's like I'm not a big fan of peas. I don't know if anyone out there likes peas. I don't like peas. I don't like the way they taste. I don't like the way their texture. So whenever I get peas and mashed potatoes, I'm like, help me, mashed potatoes. Help me, just slide the peas over into the mashed potatoes. And so people that seek out fitness entertainments, people that seek out wellness information online are people that like peas. So people that I'm going to gobble, gobble, gobble. Let's do it. Whereas, if you just imagine people coming to our channel and expecting lots of gaming news, and then just like, what's this wellness nonsense? I came here to talk about video games. It's the opposite of wellness. There's a market for gaming health tips. Yes, for people that do that exclusively, I think. But I don't know. We'll see. You never know. Never say never. 7th, I'm giving you the quick answers because we're on your seventh point. Gaming industry fact checking. This I like. Okay, now Screaming Argonaut said something. Give peas a chance. Okay, I said it out loud and I didn't even get the joke, but I get it now. I've been giving peas a chance for 41 years. You had your chance, peas. My mom hates peas too. It's one of the things we really connect on deeply. You mentioned this in the podcast, and it's a good idea. Following a hot narrative thread through the multiple podcast episodes for something like the ever-shifting narrative leading up to the Xbox One, Fallout 76, or Anthem would have been fascinating to see fact-checked week by week. I mean, we do that essentially with corrections. It's always interesting to see something live in corrections for like 4 weeks. Like Bossman would bring it up and I'd be like, again? He's like, yeah, we're still learning about it. We're still trying to get that fact right. Just kind of shows how difficult that can be. Yeah, excited about the challenge of getting everything wrong. Promises made by corporations, quarterly updates could be interesting. 8th, Phil Spencer Xbox Series X marketing post-mortem. If I can leverage my Patreon support into one request, this is it. There's no podcast that cares more about the marketing of a gaming console more than Easy Allies. Again, I hope. I really, really hope. But I don't know. I don't listen to many, many, many gaming podcasts. And so if that's true, fantastic. We did it. Mission accomplished. Phil Spencer is likely easier to contact at this moment due to working from home. I don't know why you would assume that. I imagine Phil Spencer is pretty damn busy right now. I know you have your contacts. Reach out to Phil with your... What contact do we have with Phil? I know you know Phil. I know you can get Phil on the phone. I met Phil for the first time at the Game Awards last year. So I did not get his number. I'm sorry. Maybe I should have. Hey, Phil, give me a number. Give me your number, Phil. I know you have your contacts. Reach out to Phil with your clip from Easy Update. I will not reach out with the clip from Easy Update. That is the last thing I would do. I would, if I'm going to get Phil on the phone, if I literally am dialing Phil Spencer on my phone, that is following a phone call to Ian Hank to tell him to delete that episode of Easy Update. And tell him you want to do a debrief about the marketing once the consoles are launched. Fun fact, though, when I did talk to Phil Spencer at the Game Awards party, it was about them announcing they're showing the Xbox Series X at the Game Awards. I was like, hey, who talked to who? Was that Microsoft that talked to them? And was that, Microsoft was Microsoft's idea. They reached out to Keighley's team. But I was like, I gotta know. And then, like I always say, I had my out. I came in, I needed an answer to that question. And I said, congratulations on announcing the Xbox Series X. I'm going to go get a drink. And then I left. I was hoping he'd be like, no, Jones, stop. Let's talk more. But he didn't. Someone has to interview Phil on the step-by-step decision-making that he had made during the pandemic. It'll be Giant Bomb. If he knows someone wants to do an interview with him about the future, he may take better mental notes now. Here we go. 9th, Jones, you're going to do great. Aw, the moment you signed off a podcast saying Free Hong Kong was the most proud I've ever been of you. Aw. 10th, which of the 9 Easy Allies were Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts? Eagle Scout. Wait. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and country and obey the Scout law. There's a last sentence to it, but I don't remember. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent. I did it! I didn't do the that's the motto, and then the oath. To keep myself physically strong, mentally aware, and morally straight, I think. Might have got that, but I got the motto down. Woo! Wow. That just stays there, you know? It's something you haven't said in like a decade. It's in there. The human brain, everybody. The human brain. Some of the other allies might have been Boy Scouts. I don't recall if any of them were Eagle Scouts. I've never had an Eagle Scout conversation with any of the other allies, but hell yeah, I'm an Eagle Scout. And proud. The Finnish ally. I've pitched this before, but now that the podcast will be going through changes, I've decided to give this one more try. I love this. Every time there's going to be a new host of the podcast, Finnish ally is going to show up and be like, can you please do these things? Would it be a good idea to drop a 10-minute teaser segment on Friday before releasing the full podcast? It could be a jolly news segment, a passionate rant, or anything in between. You would be killing a couple of birds with one stone. One, you would actually be promoting your podcast on YouTube and doing it in an appealing way. Modern Warfare 2 announced and launched is much more attractive video title than Easy Allies Podcast 208. I will think about that moving forward. Again, Kyle was very averse to changing anything with the title because it always had a negative effect on the views of the podcast, even though you'd think it wouldn't. But anytime he said like, hey, here's what we talked about this week, views tanked. These clipped segments can help bring in new people, but also benefit your current subscribers. I'm way down with this concept. Now that I'm hosting the podcast, it's something that I might integrate. I'm also thinking about just generally doing promos, shooting something where I'm like, hey, everybody, we're about to shoot the Easy Allies podcast. Big news this week. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. If you check out right now, you can get it early access tomorrow. Otherwise, you can check it out on Sunday. Thanks, everybody. Love and respect. Throw that up over the weekend on Twitter. I wouldn't put that up on YouTube because that would get confusing in the podcast playlist. For example, I had no idea the PS5 controller was revealed, so I completely missed that entire podcast. Number 2, since news these days seems to have a very short shelf life, it would be a good idea to get your commentary on hot topics out there as soon as possible. 3, you could keep your podcast titles as they currently are. 4, these clipped segments would give your channel something it currently hasn't, a short-form gaming news update, if you will. 5, if you are currently uploading 6 to 7 videos between your main podcasts, so this would make your channel a bit more active and more diverse. I don't know if we need our channel to be more active. We're putting up a bunch of stuff. The problem is all of that would, I'm assuming you would want Finnish Ally to go into the Easy Allies podcast playlist. And imagine how confusing that would be if you're like a couple weeks late on the Easy Allies podcast. You're like, oh, let me get caught up. And then you click on a new file and it's just that's confusing for me. I'm a big fan of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And that gets confusing for me sometimes when I boot up the HBO app and I'm like, okay, where's the new episode? Wait, nope, that's a clip. Wait, where is it? And it's like, it's over here. Okay. And how do I find it? Just the date. It just says Last Week Tonight, April 20th. I'm like, boop, there it is. That's how I find it. That's how I know it's the new one. So me actively searching for new shows, that's what I look for. That's what I expect. I don't care what John Oliver's talking about that week. I just, I want to watch that show. So, I don't want to put a bunch of clips up and then have a different amount of clips one week versus the other week. And then people are just like, I just want to find the episode of the podcast. Like, I don't want to look at clips. I literally just want to find the hour-and-a-half version. And Blood says, even if we did a promo on YouTube, which I am not suggesting, Blood, I think we should just do that on social media. It wouldn't go in the playlist. So yeah, want to keep that playlist clean. But these are good suggestions, Finnish Ally. And there is one more. You are no, that's it. So yes, I will experiment with some form of what you're talking about. I hopefully will do it this week. I have a lot of things and a lot of ideas swimming around my brain. I almost kind of just want to get through the podcast once. And so, which I know, some of you are like, you've already done that because you hosted it when Kyle was gone. The note gathering, the assembly of the podcast itself is something I've never done before. And so this week will be the first time of me doing that. So, I want to keep expectations low for the podcast. I don't want this podcast to just be like, dun, 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 it's the Brandon Jones Show. Here's how the podcast is going to change. It's really just going to be like, hey, here's another episode. It's me. It's not Kyle. Moving forward. Asbo Zapruder. Okay, that's fine. I just thought it would be nice as all. Anyway, if Easy Allies was the impoverished mother of twin boys and gave up one to her wealthy employer, would they really think that was going to end well for either of them? Oh no, there will be blood. But, maybe it might work out, giving up the child to a wealthy employer, we aren't corporate, but we are, we have lots of support here on Patreon. We have lots of people. So we do have wealthy donors. We do have people that are wealthy that can, pass some of that income along to Easy Allies, help us support the channel and the entertainment that we are creating. So I don't know, having financial support like that could work out. So maybe it might be naive, but I think it will work well. Interesting that you picked this example this week with Kyle being gone. Is that what we did? We gave Kyle up. Kyle will come back one day. I think you're talking about Blood Brothers. I'm not sure. I need to see that again. I saw that in London, I think. Next Gen Hef. With the month also coming to an end, that means another community showcase is coming up. Will this finally be the one with Huber? Yes. Can I finally release my first of possibly 3-part fan idea pitch for a Batman Beyond trilogy? 3-part? Oh, it's a trilogy. Oh, there we go. That's why. Okay. Because I was curious. I was like, wow, this is going to be a really interesting hot take on how to do Batman Beyond the movie. I would just do the first couple episodes of Batman Beyond as a movie. But there's a whole trilogy concept here. I gotta go back and revisit my Batman Beyond. J. Christ 08. Why don't you guys stream the podcast for Patreon members and set it private like Cup of Jones? We don't stream the podcast because we want the podcast to be good. And every now and then we do a live podcast because it's fun, it's messy, it brings our community in. It kind of, especially this last one is really fun because we clipped out the middle part of the podcast, but people got to see the pre-part and the post-part. Kyle and I talked about, and I've talked to the allies about the possibility of doing like a quick live thing. I'm not going to mess with that now that we're home. That would be something maybe we would implement once we got back into the studio. But just a quick live check-in with chat before we shoot the podcast. So like, okay, we're about to shoot the podcast. What news stories happened? Let me know, chat. Let me write down and add stuff. Kyle seemed to dig that idea. I just think if he had thought of that before. Anything that was more work, Kyle was always like, and I feel it. Because I have no idea how much work there really is. You don't know, you can see it on paper, but you don't really know until you do that work. But there's just so many elements, all the corrections music, all of this stuff that's added in. Some of that stuff we just can't, it's very, very difficult to do live. And there are lots of times here, Inside Baseball. Here's a very important fact that you didn't get to see and that you might not have been aware of in not the last podcast, but the podcast before that. After we were done with podcast halftime, Ian Hank went to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh yeah, I said it. Mm-hmm. Just process that, okay? Just think about that. And I want Ian Hank to be able to go to the bathroom, I don't want to like pause the podcast or if something technically goes wrong, power goes out or something. It's just, I want people, because I imagine a lot of people tune into the Easy Allies podcast and that's it. That might change once I get way more involved in the Patreon side of the Easy Allies podcast and the YouTube comment side of the Easy Allies podcast. And really get a sense of what people think. There were ideas that I brought up, like the Desire Index that I talked about, and Kyle was like, get ready, because I would just learn about that stuff through Kyle. Kyle would tell me what other people thought of stuff that he was doing on the podcast. But there are lots of reasons why we don't do it live, but we will, in the year of 2020, you will likely get one or two more live episodes of the Easy Allies podcast because it is fun to do. It's just, like I said, when people come in and only watch the Easy Allies podcast, maybe our reviews, and that's it. If they come in and it's live, or if something changes, it'd be like, I don't understand what's going on. Why is this so? Why was there that? Why did Ian go to the bathroom for 5 minutes? Why was that a part of the podcast? That is obviously something that we would want to clip out moving forward. But like I said, looking for promo potential, looking possibly for some sort of live stream implementation. I want to get weird with Easy Allies podcast. It might be a weird year for the podcast because experimenting with this stuff, I'm not going to know if it works until we do it. Chris Snow, what are the plans for future horror game streams? This is not something I thought about that would change once Kyle left. Horror game streams, because you get Huber playing the horror game and you get Kyle squeamish, whimpering through the whole thing. I'm going to miss that. Huber and Damiani? What about Huber? I like horror. Although I won't be like scared. We just got to get somebody who's like really scared, We got to get somebody that we bring in, somebody that we literally pay just to do horror streams. That's just like a scaredy cat. Huber and Damiani, that could work. They've played horror games together. I'm down, but it'll be different. Also, please, Predator Hunting Ground group streamer Huber is the hunter. Tomorrow night, we are streaming Predator Hunting Grounds. And Huber, we're all going to be hunters, I believe. I think we're gonna change that out. Should work similarly to how the Resident Evil Resistance stream went. Zachary Vale, or Valley. I know things have been hectic with Kyle's departure and your new responsibility hosting the podcast, but I just want to know if you have a timeline for when Who Is in My Bathroom will be released to the public for remixing. So to give everybody an update, to remind people what's going on, and I do have to put it on my list. Hold on a second. My to-do list right here. It's actually not officially on the list. I should put it on because it's just something I expect to remember, but I really should make a point to help us write Dreams Lovers. And I'll be like, ah, yes, yes, yes. So I just need to add text to Blood says, you don't want me. I don't get scared of most of this stuff. Challenge accepted. Do you, I don't know. I mean, if you're live, you can see that comment. But if you're not, Blood just said, I don't get scared of most of this stuff. He also said most. So you got to wonder, what is it? What's the game? What scares Daniel Bloodworth? Did I just say the name of a new show coming to Easy Allies? What scares Daniel Bloodworth? Can you just imagine? Like, it'd be so great if 90% of that show he wasn't scared. If it was literally him, you know, just the picture in picture. You just imagine Blood, like, just watching. All of a sudden, like, the eyes maybe widen. You know, takes a sip of water. Just like, try again. You're like, I try. I need to add a lot of text to explain to somebody that is going to possibly remix Who Is in My Bathroom, because there are logistical leaps that need to be accomplished to finish the level that Kyle and I made for Dreams Lovers. Obviously, with Kyle out now, that level is locked. I mean, I still have ways that I can contact Kyle, but our development of that level has ceased, and we have an idea of what we want that level to be. And so I just need to take some time. Right now I'm focused on Final Fantasy VII Remake because I want to get that done and have a conversation with Brad Ellis about it. And then it looks like somewhere in May, sorry. Blood says, I think too, the other person there insulates me. I'm much more likely to get freaked out with just myself and a pair of headphones. Well, then let's make it happen, Blood. Let's do it, baby. Let's just take a game and rank it on the potential blood fear scale. May looks like a very light month for Brandon Jones in video games. Not a lot coming out in May that I'm terribly excited about. Some new release dates dropped this morning about stuff that's going to be happening this summer that I'm looking forward to, but not a lot for me in May. So it'd be nice maybe to step away from my hardcore gaming addiction, and work on Easy Allies a little bit more. Finish Who's in My Bathroom. But Zachary, you give me life. You give me hope that is something that you are focused on, because I would really like to see that level finished. But it's again talking about the game jam, which we did before, that I would like one day to bring back to the Easy Allies podcast to do another game jam. But I get a little nervous with the prospect of passing on some of the community and being like, you finish it. You know, it's like, I feel bad that I can't add those final elements to our Dreams level. And I'm nervous that I'm going to put that up on Dreams and nobody's really going to do anything with it. But at the same time, I also believe in our community. I know how talented and creative all of you are. I just want to give you work, you know, that technically should have been work that I did for your entertainment. Now you entertain us entertaining you. Joseph, I know Phase 4 was a big deal last year. Are you guys looking at doing anything public about Phase 5, even if it is just a Patreon post or short update? Maybe. We're not in like a phase. We're in a phase right now, but it is not a forward-moving phase. You know what I mean? It's not like, get ready for the new Easy Allies. We were prepped on doing a bunch of promos. Once Kyle left, I was going to post a YouTube video that was, you know, after I did the first podcast, that was basically just going to be like, okay, Kyle's gone. Let's reinvigorate people with Easy Allies that might not have heard about us, and let's get a bunch of different promos out on our different channels. And it's just a bad time to promote us, to be like, hey, we're all at home, Easy Allies. That said, we don't know how long this is going to happen. There definitely is, you know, every month is an opportunity to re-examine what we do. The May meeting was different from the April meeting, was different from the March meeting, because the situation changes as this pandemic goes on. And so you will get updates from us, but nothing that we would package in a way of like, look at all these crazy new things happening. We have had, you know, shout out to some of the allies who have come up with some fun new show ideas, and we do have fun things that are unannounced that are coming in the future. It's just none of it is packaged in a way. Especially considering I feel like a yearly update that takes a holistic look at the channel and outlines the major plans for the year will help us get excited about what's to come. I feel you. Honestly, I'm mainly just hoping to learn what's going on with Together We RPG. I'm looking forward to that as well. Currently, that's being produced by Ian Hink and Ben Moore, but the two of them have been, you know, that situation obviously has changed because Kyle was producing that show as well. we will see. There is a possibility that Together We RPG will not happen because Kyle has left. But I cannot speak to that because I was not the one producing that show. So I, like you, wait in anticipation on what could potentially happen with that. But we will see moving forward. Ali Salemi with the final question, I believe. Yes. If we were all stuck at home because of, let's say, a pandemic, and we had more free time on our hands, kind of a personal question, but which of the 3 following games would you recommend to someone based on your limited exposure to them? Which one would you be most interested in to play on your own, and which one do you think would make for a better stream? Fire Emblem, Three Houses, Judgment with English voice acting, and Devil May Cry 5. Nothing against Devil May Cry 5. Devil May Cry 5 looks like a lot of fun. I think... if you talking about free time, you want that free time to get eaten up, Fire Emblem Three Houses, baby. There you go. One of the other things about Fire Emblem Three Houses that I think Animal Crossing kind of scratches that itch. I know, people look at Animal Crossing and they, you think about it in this quarantine era that we are living in right now. It's nice to have a tropical getaway. I have not played Animal Crossing today. I'm just not thinking about it. Like, oh man, I can't. The moment that this Cup of Jones is over, I got to do a quick editorial so I can get in my town. I feel like being stuck at home is only giving me less free time. Yeah, exactly. Phil Spencer's busy right now. I'm telling you. But if you have more free time, get in that Fire Emblem Three Houses, because not only will you play a lot, but you can potentially play a second time and a third time if you want to get all the different story angles. But what Fire Emblem Three Houses does, that Animal Crossing also does, is it simulates a day-to-day life. Much, kind of like Persona. Like there are, I don't know if there are calendar dates. I haven't played Three Houses, but you do get a sense of what happens with these characters day by day by day. And I imagine it would be nice, to play something like The Sims, or play something that emulates a normal lifestyle, emulates a lifestyle where people are not scared of, potentially getting a virus and passing it on to someone and killing them. On top of all of those things, Fire Emblem Three Houses is a big, big game. What do I think I'd be most interested to play on my own? Fire Emblem. I almost did it. I told Ian this and it killed him. I told Ben this and they were just like, come on, Jones, do it. And I'm like, I don't have the time for all of that. But I hovered over Fire Emblem on the Switch eShop. I literally I not only like the game where I looked at the information, I clicked on the game and then clicked on the purchase, like hovered over the purchase button and had my finger over the button. It was like, who am I kidding? I don't have time to play this. It'd be fun to just have it already on. I have so many games on my Switch. Like Sinking City is on my Switch. I'm not going to have time to play that. Torchlight 2, I grabbed a code. We got an unsolicited code for Torchlight 2. I was like, sure. I played a little bit of that on Switch. There's so many games on Switch, so I'm just like, I'm never, Super Mario Maker 2, sitting there on my Switch, ready to go. I haven't, barely touched it. So yeah, lots of games. But Fire Emblem is one that I would want to check out. And finally, what would make a better stream? I think Judgment, because you have as far as I know, you have decisions to make throughout Judgment, and so that would be interesting to get the community involved in all of that. Trials of Mana. Sorry, we have learned it's Trials of Mana. Officially in the game, it pronounces it as Mana. Trials of Mana is getting a little tougher as I continue, chat, so hoping it continues to ratchet up a bit more in a few hours. It dumps healing items on you, though, so no need to buy any yet. Nice. I've definitely been hoarding all of my items in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and as I'm getting near the end, I'm like, oh, okay. I have a lot of these. I don't need these anymore. There we go. For a quick editorial, so I can go play Animal Crossing, let's talk about the podcast. Wait a minute. I'll wait until this video shows up. An XSplit, so the graphic is nice and clean. Come on, XSplit. What do we think? What are the odds? Is this graphic going to be clean? Is this going to be stuttery? Let's find out. Oh, nice and clean. Didn't get a preview before I clicked on that, so I was like a little nervous. Hey, everybody. Cheers. Let's do an editorial. Let's talk about the Easy Allies podcast. Now, I know if you just listened to the podcast this last week, you're like, you might have listened to it this morning. You're like, haven't we talked about this? Haven't we had this conversation? One thing that I didn't bring up in the podcast that I've been thinking about, because I've been thinking about the podcast from all sorts of fun different angles. 6-1, said Jeff Brennan, for whether that was going to work. We made it. Let's hope the ending is clean, too. We'll have a nice, clean episode of Cup of Jones. I want to talk about why I think the podcast is important. and why kind of my goals for the podcast, not specifically in how to improve the quality of the podcast for people that already listen to it, but how to broaden the audience of the Easy Allies podcast. I'm not going to set a goal. I'm not going to kick myself at the end of the year if the Easy Allies podcast gets the same views that it does. But I would like to figure out how to get more people involved in Easy Allies through the Easy Allies podcast. For many reasons. One, it's called the Easy Allies podcast. It is one of the only things, we have our Easy Allies Q&A, but that is very Patreon focused. We have our Easy Allies Community Showcase. We have things that carry our brand name, but for people that are like, oh, what's this Easy Allies? Oh, here's the Easy Allies podcast. I imagine they're clicking on that and thinking, hopefully through this, I'm understanding who Easy Allies is. And so it's one thing for me to want the Easy Allies podcast to reflect myself because I am a host. It's another thing for me to want it to reflect each of the individual allies and their tastes. And it's another thing entirely for it to reflect us as a company. Who are we as a Patreon? Who are we as a YouTube channel? Who are we as an editorial voice? What does that mean for the podcast? And also, where does that podcast fit in relation to Frame Trap, Reaction Shots, Friend Code, all of the other conversations that we have about games. And it's going to be very interesting talking with Ben about Frame Trap in relation to the stories that come up every week, having that first Nintendo Direct with me hosting the podcast and then talking with Damiani, being like, what are you going to talk about versus what I'm going to talk about? I know some people aren't opposed to listening to the same general conversation happening 2 separate times on different podcasts, but I want not necessarily to eliminate stuff like that, but I just want to be as conscious of that stuff as possible. And one eye-opening thing for us has been now working with an actual ad network, working with Roost, because before we worked with Roost, we really had to incentivize our Patreon community to work with the podcast, which was very, not necessarily, very similar, but was aligned with the same methods that we would use to invigorate, to incentivize our Patreon community to just continue investing or potentially up their pledges or potentially tell other people about Easy Allies so they would come in and invest. Now that we're working with an ad network, it's changed the game a little bit because now we are just selling ourselves to the world. We are literally just, it's kind of like a blind taste test. We have these big ad companies that are checking out the Easy Allies, that are just kind of looking in and being like, oh, okay, well, we have this product. We would like to get it to this community. How's this podcast doing? How are the numbers? What's the community surrounding this? What do they talk about? How do they do ad reads? How do they handle our product? How interested are they in our product? I bet it's been interesting if you I'm curious, because I don't hear from a lot of these people. I imagine that makes sense that a lot of people that, prefer to hear the ad reads and the regular podcast. I know some people listen to the podcast on Friday and then re-listen to it on Sunday to get that ad read. But I imagine there's a lot of you that are like, no more ads? Sweet. That just check out that Friday version, early access, and don't look back. And it's been but for those that do listen to the Sunday version, that listen to how we handle ad reads, that's evolved. That's been an interesting process. Us trying out these products, us knowing. I know somebody called me out because I said Postmates was great, and they were like, "Wait a minute, they're false advertising. I know Jones doesn't like food. I don't like preparing food. I love ordering food. Ordering food's great." So when I talked about Postmates, that was 100% genuine. But I do, there is a genuineness that is very important to Easy Allies. We do a lot of streaming. We are crowdfunded. So there's a lot of instances where it behooves us to be as honest and transparent and natural with our audience as possible. Doing the ad reads the way we do it challenges that a bit because yes, I am reading copy that is sent to us. Yes, I am being asked to try a product. And yes, there have been several companies that have reached out to us and we're like, nah, that's not a good fit. Or they said, hey, will you try this product? And we're like, nah, we're not going to try that. Don't want to get into specifics, but it has been an interesting ongoing process. And I feel that we kind of hit a ceiling with how many sponsors we wanted to have back at the Easy Allies podcast when we did the sponsorship through Patreon. And we had a cap. And so there was a limit to how much money we could make through Patreon. There may be a limit on how much money we can make working with Roost, how much money we can make from an ad network on the Easy Allies podcast, how much money we can make doing ads in a traditional way that most of the other podcasts do. I don't know where that cap is. I'm very much looking forward to finding out. I really want to hit that cap. I really want to make a lot of money through the Easy Allies podcast. It'll be good for the allies. It'll be good for our business. It'll be good for all of you. And I think that there is a lot of room for growth with the podcast. I'm not exactly sure where that growth is. You know, if I make changes to the podcast, I don't know how our audience will react to that. I don't know how the views will react to that. But I am down to experiment. And so I'm telling you this because obviously we have all of our tiers on Cup of Jones. We have people that just listen to it. We have people that are here right now that listen to it live. And you are my people. You are the people that I believe are most invested, not only necessarily in Easy Allies, because there might be some people that, invest financially more than the people that are listening live right now. And there are people, obviously, that turn out for every single review that we do or watch our group streams. But I think the people that are listening to Cup of Jones are people that are the most interested in what's going to change week to week with Easy Allies. The podcast is going to change in little tiny ways week to week. And I want the podcast to grow really bad. I think it can. I think there are ways we can get the podcast out in front of a bunch of different eyeballs, that there are ways that we can show. I saw some people reach out to us, and this felt really good, that said, hey, this visual and audio hiccups aside, they're like, all of you do a very good job in terms of managing a conversation online. When we have a podcast, when we have group streams, we don't talk over each other a lot because that is a skill that we have developed over 4 years working with each other, doing the type of content that we do. And so I think that even especially in this era, in this pandemic, in all of us having to work from home, I think we offer a somewhat unique product. And I think even with the limitations that we have in the way that we produce the shows, the way that we have to produce the shows during this pandemic, I think that we can still gain viewers. I think that we can still get more people involved in the Easy Allies podcast. And I'm ready to shake things up. Some of these are ideas that I've had that I pitched to Kyle. He was not interested in doing some of these things. I didn't want to just give Kyle more work for him to do, and some of these things I wasn't sure if they were going to work. But if the buck stops with me, if it's just me producing the show and me having to make these changes, then I want to tweak. I want to get more people involved in that show. I think it is the one thing. Everything at the Easy Allies obviously could get more viewers. I would love to get 1 million views on every review that we put up, but I think the Easy Allies podcast has room to grow. And echoing a lot of the stuff that we talked about on Friday, I want the Easy Allies podcast to, as I mentioned before, feel like it represents our business, but I wanted to feel also that it represents the individual allies. We're down one ally. There's 8 of us now. There'll be 5 allies on every single podcast. And so you will get the lion's share of the ally blood on every podcast, not just, the ally blood worth, but who the allies are, what they're interested in. And I mentioned this to Kyle. I want to get the allies more involved in the podcast more. And I brought this up at the meeting, and all of them are excited about this. Obviously, this is going to be a case-by-case basis, but if we have a Resident Evil 3 conversation, I want Huber leading that. If there was a Nintendo Direct and I got Damiani, I want Damiani, not hosting that segment. I will still moderate the conversation, but I want him to kick that stuff off. I want, Bloodworth. I kind of showed up with my cup and cockiness every week on the podcast being like, hey, Kyle, do your best job hosting this podcast, buddy. That was kind of my attitude the whole time. Whereas obviously I am not Kyle. Blood is not me. And not only that, but Blood and I are both in manager roles within this company. And so I think it'll be a different vibe. You'll get a sense that not only are we trying to sort out the gaming news, but we are planning the week. We're talking about what the last week was like. We're talking about what the next month or couple months is going to be like at Easy Allies. How the news that is coming out from this business is not only affecting the industry, but is affecting Easy Allies. And all of that is not only changing week to week, but is changing literally minute by minute as we go through the podcast itself. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, I don't want to have too many expectations going into the first podcast because, like I said, a lot of this stuff is going to be changing. And so I am looking forward to not only going through Love and Respect, obviously, and getting all of the suggestions from chat. I realized, I got to think of that new bit by Thursday. And then last night when I was going to bed, I was like, no, I have to think of that new bit by Tuesday. Because that's when I got to post the Love and Respect post, and then the new bit will be in there. I have 2 ideas for the new bit. I'm not in love with either of them. There is one that I like more than the other one, but it's like selfish. It's like a selfish thing. It's not something that I think is going to be perfect for the podcast. Maybe it's not going to live for very long. Maybe I'll just do the first bit for like 4 or 5 weeks. And then during that time, I'll be like, oh, I got ideas for better bits now. Or hey, if you have ideas for bits, send them on in. I will definitely give you credit. I definitely don't want to come from a position of Kyle, kind of flexing and being like, hey, I thought of this funny thing. Tough Bouncers, that was a Kyle Bossman idea. I don't care who's got the ideas. I just want good ideas. I want to integrate them into the podcast. I want the podcast to be as good as it possibly can. So there we go. That is my take on the Easy Allies podcast. Let me know what you think. I am excited, to add to the point that I was just making, excited not only to get feedback on the podcast, obviously through the podcast channels, YouTube and Patreon, but via Cup of Jones. Let me know what you thought about the last week's podcast. Let me know what you would like, and understand if you have suggestions, I may take them or leave them, but I want all of you to be involved in what we make the Easy Allies podcast moving forward, and to rotate all the way back around to the first point that I was making at the beginning of this editorial. I think that podcast has room for growth. I think there's a lot of people that would enjoy the Easy Allies podcast that don't know it exists. There's a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs. We got to get that under, and it feels bad, man. I saw somebody posting on social media. They were like, "What's your favorite gaming channel, or who made the biggest impact on you in the gaming industry over the years, or something?" And somebody was just like, "Shout out to Game Trailers and Trailer Jones." And I read comments like that on social media, and I'm like, do you know that we're still around? Do you know that Easy Allies is a thing? Every now and then when we see reviews, people are like, oh, cool, that Jeff Keighley VO. We're like, just people still discovering us. And so I think there's a lot of room to grow. I have just been involved in other things. And so I'm taking my reviews, taking Trailer Jones, taking other responsibilities, putting those on the shelf for now. Really focusing on the podcast and ways to get more viewers, to make it a more interesting show, and to not feel crushed by the weight of the legacy of Kyle Bossman. Looking forward to never saying that name again. No, just moving past, the things that we have no power over, the fact that Kyle is no longer a part of Easy Allies. And I think that even though it will be sad if we don't mention Kyle's name on a regular basis, I think that'll be a representation of growth, that is a hurdle that we have moved past, that we have shown that Easy Allies is many things. It's not just Kyle. He's not just the podcast. The podcast is our community. The podcast is this business. The podcast is this Patreon, is the other 8 allies as well. And we will see. We will see what the Easy Allies podcast is like with Brandon Jones at the helm. Spoilers. And this is just everybody that's tuning in to Cup of Jones now. If you spread the word, that's fine. If you let people know about this, that's fine. And I don't want this to be one of potentially many disappointments with watching a new podcast with me as host. But for this podcast, this Thursday, I am going to shave. I can't, this beard is too much. Just like, it's the point where, like, when you get to the point when you feel the beard, when you put your head down on the pillow, when I go to bed at night, and it's just like, I'm like, it's like starting to get hot in LA. And when it gets like hot and I'm in like shorts with a beard, it's like, it's just not, it was fun. It's like the not shaving takes a back seat to just like having stuff on your face, but it's fun. Maybe I'll get back to it, at some point later on. Yeah, I know. It just has, everyone's so sad. They got the beard. We love the beard so much. But boy, this is having a big reaction. This is the worst news I've dropped. This will be all the hard work that I do on the Easy Allies podcast. I'm upending by shaving my beard. But I don't want people to tune into a new podcast and be like, what did Jones do to himself? I know you love my beard. I know. No love from our community for this beard could have more of an impact than how uncomfortable this thing has grown just having it on my face. I don't know. If I wake up Thursday and I'm lazy and I don't feel like cutting it, but I'm thinking about it, folks. I'm thinking about it. And one of these days, look at this. Look how long. I can almost put this hair in my mouth. That's how long this hair is getting. And Amanda was really, really supportive when I told her, see, she doesn't care. She's got, her hair goes long, whatever. Just, put it in a ponytail. Done. I don't have that luxury. My hair has never been this long, not since high school. when I did Jesus Christ Superstar, we all had to grow our hair out. Thank you, director Jim Bell. But she was like, I'll cut your hair. And then now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I think I might take you up on that. And she's like, I'm nervous. I don't know. She's like watching YouTube videos, getting suggestions from everybody. There's all sorts of amateur hair stylists all around the world right now. A lot of people that never thought they were going to cut their spouse's hair that are now realizing the time has finally come. But now I look like Brad. Oh, well, that's the best news I've heard. That's one reason to keep it. I also thought it would be like thicker. Like I thought, and it just seems like it's just a lot of like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like I thought it would. I don't know. Essentially, it's laziness. You're looking at laziness right now. That's what this is. This isn't a style choice. This isn't the way I want to look. This is me. I mean, I got to admit, though. That's a good look. I like this look a lot. For some reason, when I put the cowboy hat on, it all makes sense. If I could exclusively do cowboy content for Easy Allies, of course I would keep this beard. But if I got to host a podcast about gaming news, I don't know. I might want to clean myself up a little bit, especially for my first Easy Allies podcast. But we will see. Alice, I appreciate your support in my facial hair journey that I'm going through during this pandemic. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to disappoint you. Hopefully, you'll have my back with the Easy Allies podcast moving forward. Whatever comes out of my mouth, whatever is on my face, whatever my hair looks like, whatever topics we discuss, whatever opening bit I introduce. I'm doing it all for you, chat. Our takeaways mostly are from Logan Young. Let's just take all of Logan's takeaways for today. And we got a lot of fun content for you this week. A lot of streaming. Again, shout out to Ben Moore for streaming the heck out of this week. A lot of fun content coming from him. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We got more streams to check out today. Hello. Let's just head on over. Let's just see what else is happening today. Frame Trap's happening today. Oh, yeah, we aren't streaming anything today, but you're the Don't Skip on the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. Check it out if you haven't yet. And take care of yourselves. Be safe. Wash your hands. Stay far away from people, even those that you love. And I love all of you. Cheers, everybody. Have a good week.